billions of euros are being invested to build artificial islands in the middle of the North Sea. Islands so massive they look like pieces of a new country rising from the ocean. No one has ever attempted anything like this before. And the question that makes everything even more intriguing is simple. Why build entire stretches of land in a place where no one can live yet? These structures promise to redefine Europe's energy systems and possibly even the future of human life at sea. And the most surprising part is that the boldest phase of this plan has not even been revealed. The images appear almost like a magic trick, gigantic structures emerging in the middle of the ocean, as if someone had decided to redraw Europe's map by force. With every zoom, it becomes stranger and more fascinating. Something impossible is being built almost 60 miles from the coast. In one of the most violent stretches of the North Sea, where waves dozens of feet high often swallow entire ships. And at the center of this hostile environment, the so-called Phantom Islands are taking shape. No one expected a project valued at 137 billion euros to begin with artificial blocks rising, like lost fragments of a forgotten continent. The models show platforms as large as small cities, connected to hundreds of offshore wind energy turbines, forming a metallic skeleton straight out of science fiction. And this leads to the question no one can ignore. Why would anyone build islands in the middle of a stormy void? This initial silence is what raises the most questions. Because if you look closely, you realize these islands are not merely new land masses, but parts of an extremely ambitious plan, a plan that aims to reorganize the entire energy logic of Europe. Yet the real reason behind this monumental project is still hidden. And once it comes to light, it reveals a problem so bizarre it almost sounds like a poorly told joke. What is most surprising is that behind the grandeur of these structures, there is a paradox few people would imagine at first glance. Europe generates so much wind energy in the North Sea that on certain days, the excess simply goes to waste. Entire turbines are shut down, while cities only a few hundred miles away continue paying high electricity prices. It is like preparing a banquet and throwing half of it away while your neighbor goes hungry right outside your door. Researchers explain that this chaos happens because the seafloor has become a tangle of cables improvised over the years. A fragmented system that is difficult to expand and even harder to organize. When you see those maps filled with tangled lines, it becomes clear why the energy islands idea emerged. Hubs capable of connecting different countries without overloading the current routes. It is an attempt to turn disorder into a true renewable energy hub. And the economic impact of this invisible waste is alarming. Studies indicate that billions of euros vanish every year because the energy cannot reach the people who need it. And once you understand how this problem has dragged on for decades, you realize Europe needed something radical, something that would completely change the game. That is where an unexpected story begins to unfold. For centuries, the North Sea was a theater of conflict, dangerous routes and disputes that shaped the destiny of entire kingdoms. Vikings crossed these waters, warships sank in these waves, and every nation in the region carried a quiet resentment through generations. That is why it is so symbolic to see that the same sea that divided countries for so long is now becoming the largest collective project in European history. It is almost poetic and profoundly strategic. Everything started quietly in a hall in Brussels in 2017, instead of fiery speeches. Leaders who once fought over territories met for something far more unusual: energy cooperation. That is where agreements such as the Esbjerg Declaration and the Ostend Agreement were formed, marking a monumental shift. The feeling was that old rivals finally understood that staying isolated would cost far more than sharing resources and responsibilities. And this unexpected reunion opened the door to an ambitious vision: the creation of the future North Sea Wind Power Hub, a network capable of uniting countries through energy instead of politics. But this shift in mindset did not happen overnight, and once you discover how it evolved, you understand why this cooperation is as fragile as it is powerful. I.e., And this is where the story starts brushing the borders of impossible engineering. When engineers first examined the North Sea, many said it was madness to attempt something of this scale there. Violent currents, unpredictable winds, and depths that reach hundreds of feet created a scenario that seemed unworkable. The original plan, a single island almost 1.5 square miles in size, did not survive the stress tests. It was like trying to place all the services of an entire city inside one colossal building. Elegant in theory, impractical in reality. Then came the idea that changed everything, splitting the dream into several hubs, each with a specific function. Instead of overloading one structure, they created something similar to an energy internet, where each island works like a server connected by HVDC transmission lines. This technology can send massive amounts of energy across long distances with minimal loss, which is essential when dealing with thousands of megawatts generated in the middle of the ocean. These hubs will be modular, assembled like Lego pieces on the sea, allowing quick expansion as new offshore wind energy turbines are installed. Three-dimensional models show massive converters transforming raw turbine power into a smooth flow of energy toward neighboring countries. And when you see this level of technical complexity, it feels like someone is trying to assemble an impossible puzzle. One that still has a missing piece: the fuel of the future. What few people realize is that these islands will not only collect energy, they will transform part of it into something even more valuable. On days of strong wind, when production skyrockets, the excess will be converted into green hydrogen production through electrolysis right at sea. It is like capturing every drop of an abundant resource and preventing it from slipping away due to limited grid capacity. Simple in theory, revolutionary in practice. This hydrogen can fuel airplanes, long-distance ships, steel industries, and even chemical sectors that currently depend on fossil fuels. Researchers explain that once this process is fully integrated into the hubs, it will be possible to replace millions of pounds of traditional fuels with something clean and efficient. And the best part is that all of this happens offshore without taking up space in urban or industrial zones. Now imagine the impact on daily life. The airplane on your next trip might literally use a blend derived from these ocean structures. Heavy trucks, trains, and cargo transport could operate using energy generated in regions like Dogger Bank, one of the most promising points of this new energy cycle. But to truly grasp the scale of this change, you need to look at the numbers, and they are not just big, they are shocking. When specialists put all the data together, the impact seems like something from another planet. Estimates show that the full system may exceed 170 gigawatts of installed capacity, enough energy to power tens of millions of homes. Before this, achieving such numbers would require multiple nuclear power plants. And this does not even include the efficiency gains from the hub connections that turn chaos into a stable distribution network. It is the first time Europe has created something so coordinated on this scale. The economic benefits draw even more attention. Studies point to yearly savings above 1 billion euros thanks to smarter energy exchange between countries. Efficient use of production and stable flows ensured by the renewable energy hubs scattered across the sea. The environmental impact also impresses: fewer redundant cables on the seafloor, less disruption of sediments, and a significant drop in emissions. A type of ocean organization Europe postponed for decades. And as these numbers grow, it becomes clear why governments are rushing to sign agreements and secure their share of this transformation. Projections show the region could reach 300 gigawatts by 2050, creating a model no other continent has dared to attempt at this scale. But as with every massive ambition, there are serious risks hidden behind the optimistic charts. Risks that define the true fate of this project. Behind the futuristic shine of the energy islands lies a labyrinth of challenges that keeps ministers and engineers awake at night. 9 countries need to align laws, schedules, and technical standards, something that in practice moves slower than the waves hitting those platforms. Each government has different interests, internal pressures, and conflicting priorities. And when so many parties must agree, even tiny details become silent battles. Funding is also a heavyweight. A €137 billion investment demands stability, long-term commitment, and decades of continuous maintenance. There is also a dependence on complex technologies, such as advanced HVDC transmission systems that must operate with surgical precision to avoid cascading failures. Some analysts remind that similar projects have failed in the past precisely because technology advanced more slowly than political ambition. Even so, there is a stubborn sense of hope. Cooperative models show that if countries maintain their current pace, the North Sea wind power hub could take shape in the 2030s. But the schedule is tight. The margin for error is tiny, and the world will not wait for Europe to sort out its internal dilemmas. And this tense scenario sets the stage for something much bigger than solving a regional problem: a global domino effect. When a project of this scale matures, it stops being purely European and becomes a global blueprint. Experts believe similar hubs may appear in the East China Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, and even along the coast of South America. The idea of interconnected ocean structures is gaining traction, especially in regions where energy demand grows faster than infrastructure can keep up. And every country watching this understands it is witnessing an inevitable shift. Geopolitics also enters the picture. A Europe capable of operating with energy autonomy reduces its dependence on external fuels, weakens the influence of certain petrostates, and reshapes international negotiations. The integration of hubs with green hydrogen production systems creates a new technological race, as strategic as telecommunications or semiconductors. And after the impacts of the war in Ukraine, energy security has become an absolute priority. If these models are replicated worldwide, ocean energy networks could connect entire continents by 2050. Imagine regions exchanging clean electricity through long maritime corridors, using structures inspired by sites like Dogger Bank, which is already symbolic of this transition. And once you understand how this can reshape the economy, politics, and the environment, it becomes clear that there are still more hidden layers, some far more surprising than you would expect. When divers began recording footage around the turbine bases, no one expected to see so much life in such a harsh environment. Artificial rocks, metallic structures, and restricted fishing zones created an unexpected refuge. Studies show that entire schools of fish feel safe there, occupying every cavity as if they were natural reefs. It is one of those rare moments when engineering and nature meet without direct conflict. Over time, researchers noticed that some zones near platforms connected to the energy islands showed an impressive increase in biodiversity. Oysters, cold-water corals, and species once considered rare began reappearing. The explanation is simple: less human interference, more stable spaces, and a constant supply of nutrients. These areas ended up functioning as small sanctuaries protected precisely because of the energy infrastructure. This paradox is drawing global attention. Projects inspired by the European renewable energy hub model are already studying ways to integrate marine restoration programs directly into new platforms. Oyster beds, planned artificial reefs, and ecological corridors could turn regions like Dogger Bank into laboratories of ocean regeneration. But the more this idea advances, the more it opens space for a far bolder question, one that touches the future of the islands themselves. The idea sounds like something taken from a futuristic novel: small communities living in the middle of the sea, surrounded by giant turbines and advanced infrastructure. But when architects analyze the structures planned for the energy islands, some begin to see something beyond energy function. The wide, modular, and stable bases resemble platforms capable of supporting not only machines, but people. And that sparks a curiosity difficult to ignore. The comparison with oil platforms is inevitable, since thousands of workers live for weeks on isolated structures many miles from the coast. The difference here is that hubs inspired by the North Sea Wind Power Hub have a more flexible design, ideal for laboratories, maintenance zones, and even small permanent accommodations. Projects such as Oceanics and Floating City initiatives reinforce that this transition is not fantasy. It is only a matter of engineering and purpose. And when specialists imagine the future, the possibility of ocean microvillages, research centers, and even educational tourism operating directly on these islands begins to emerge. Regions like Dogger Bank could one day host teams living for longer periods, studying climate, technology, and biodiversity in real time. But this idea, as bold as it is fascinating, opens the door to something even greater, something that needs a strong hook to connect with your audience in the conclusion. The greatest lesson is clear. When Europe decides to turn the ocean into infrastructure, it redefines the planet's energy future. These hubs show that real innovation is born when technology, courage, and cooperation move together. And the most provocative question is simple. If we are already building artificial islands to generate energy, how long before we begin building entire ways of living at sea? Subscribe to the channel and enable notifications to continue learning about the technologies that are quietly changing the world.